Hello and good day, everybody. My name is Ramny Pangilinan, and this is my legislative project on how tariffs causes issues with low-income households. Let's start. So, what are tariffs? Tariffs are basically a tax on imported goods that are placed by the government, which is also paid for by the importers. Why the government places tariffs? It's to encourage and protect local industries from imported competition, to generate more revenue, and to influence trade partners. So, what are the negative effects of tariffs? It increases the prices of locally made goods since it relies on other imported goods and services that are also being affected by tariffs. Certain industries can also be impacted, with them using goods like copper and aluminum that are also being heavily taxed. It increases the prices of certain things like vehicle parts and electronics. So, in 2018, the US imposed tariffs on imports from other countries, though most of those tariffs are mostly targeted towards China. They hope to jumpstart domestic production of those imports instead and hoping to create more jobs and reduce the trade deficit. However, the tariffs had immediate and an unintended consequence on people like low-income families because of the drastic increases on food prices. In an article by Alex Durante and Rebecca Walker from the Tax Foundation, $163 billion worth of imported goods are going to be affected by the tariffs, with those imports facing around 10 to 30% in taxes. In another post written by Shriver from The Guardian, one of the people they interviewed has stated that the price of bread they usually buy doubled in price. And that same interviewee also said that they rely on a fixed income that doesn't change with inflation. While SNAP does adjust to inflation, it won't adjust for sudden price hikes like tariffs, which already also puts a strain on certain food banks. The prices for food is also affected by the agricultural industry in the US, which tariffs have already increased on prices certain things like fertilizers and farming equipment. For households that already struggle to make ends meet, even the slightest increase in food prices can make the biggest difference in their meal plans, whether they get to go out, whether they get to eat that day, or not having to eat anything at all. So tariffs can also greatly influence a number of things like SNAP. I already mentioned before that SNAP can't account does account for inflation, but the program does not account for sudden price hikes from the sudden effects of tariffs. Often enough, low-income families suffer from something called food insecurity, which is lacking consistent access to food in order to have an active and healthy day-to-day life, which is caused by a lot of things. But the biggest thing has always remained on economic factors like inflation and tariffs. Though since SNAP benefits only adjust for inflation, it means that tariffs forces families to to stretch out their budgets in order to accommodate the rising prices for food from not only inflation, but now from the heavily imported tax that was placed upon from the importers. The average person on the SNAP program receives about $218 per month for groceries, but according to Beehive Meals, the average person spends about $235 per week from groceries alone. And since places like Guam and Hawaii have more expensive grocery prices, according to the same article, which also states that Hawaiian households spend about $1,500 per month because of several factors like the expensive groceries from food imports, because of how isolated the Hawaiian and Guam Islands are, how limited the food production is compared to the mainland, and of certain other things like gas, fare prices, and certain material costs. Aside from goods like groceries, tariffs have also influenced several other goods that an average person from today also uses, like electronics and vehicles. Certain materials, specifically copper and steel, have placed heavy tariffs on them, with Trump putting about 50% taxes on imported copper. According from the World Economic Forum in 2025, most industries rely on copper to function. With how good copper is as a conductor, it is commonly used on various things like electronics and generators. Since it's also good at conducting heat, the metal is used for cooling, and copper is also used as building material since it's also highly resistant to corrosion. according to the Copper Development Association Incorporated. It is also commonly used for construction, mostly used for indoor uses, specifically for water pipes, since it's also rust resistant despite the green you see. Even then, tariffs also put a heavy pressure on the job market, according to an article by Gary Clyde, Hofbauer, and Yi Zhang from the American Enterprise Institute. With Trump's goal of trying to revive the domestic industry for certain things, companies that import their materials are heavily influenced by the tariffs and layoffs that have occurred from the rising costs of copper, concrete, and steel that are commonly used by many construction. So what can be done? We can decrease tariffs on goods like foods and medicine, since health insurance is also getting more expensive, and how expensive healthcare is in the US. Things like medicine can also influence the rising prices. We should also increase support in certain food programs like SNAP and food stamps, so that it can help families buy more groceries from the sudden price hikes of tariffs. So in conclusions, while tariffs can be argued that they have a positive influence in certain things like GDP and bringing more revenue in the government, they have brought more negatives than they have influenced many industries negatively. It increases the prices of goods like electronics and food, with tariffs mostly affecting the common person's day-to-day life by just increasing the prices on imports of certain things. It can also be argued that the best solution for these is to reduce tariffs on imports and increase the benefits of the SNAP program, like I've said before. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.